Lawrence County depends on WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
It is us, WDXE. It's time for Stan Pierchoski. It is Friday, and it's been a whole week since you've been here, Stan.
It has. It has been a week since we've done Bulletproof Estate Planning, which we do every Friday from 8 to 9.
That's right. Stan Pierchoski with us here this morning, and we'll be on WDXE live streaming and also on Facebook and YouTube. You can check us out right there.
I've not looked that up yet. I mean, I guess I can't do it live, but I guess we could.
If you can look at it anytime.
Yeah, I'm not a big Facebook fan. I just never have been, but I can get some of the people in the office to show me.
Yeah, you can look it up Facebook, of course, and on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel.
Cool.
For the stations, and so all you got to do is type that in. It'll pull you right up, and you're showing all the rest that we do as well, so you can find them.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Hey, listen, I want to cover the seminar coming up because it's a week from tomorrow.
It is a week from tomorrow.
And it's going to be in Pulaski, and it's going to be at the American Legion. Okay, we got a pretty good turnout so far, but it's a pretty big venue, so we can fit quite a few. They got tables and chairs, and they invited us to come over there. And it's just, a few blocks from the courthouse. It's right there in town.
Yes.
So actually, a physical address is 425 Legion Drive. So so it's an easy drive from Lawrenceburg over to Pulaski. If you want to come to it, there won't be another one. Well, I don't know when the next local one's going to be, but the next one after that is in November, and that one's up in Franklin for some of our northern listeners. But a week from tomorrow at 10 o'clock, whenever we have Saturday seminars, we do them at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we call it Wills, Trust, and a Nursing Home. And that's sort of what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through about what a will is, what a trust is, the problems a will creates, and how a trust can solve those problems. And then we move into what the asset protection trust is, which is, what I call the kind of like a secret to how not to go broke if you go into long-term care. And we discuss that to an extent. And then we have a question and answer period at the end. So if you have a question already about something, and most people do because if they're thinking about these concepts, they go online and they get everybody and their brother's opinion on whatever, and they develop certain questions. Bring those questions with you. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if you develop anything during the presentation, just stick around. We do a pretty extensive Q&A at the end, and I will address any and all questions. I'll be the last one out. So if you have a question, don't leave with an unanswered question, because we call these free educational seminars, but I really focus on the word educational and it is. If you come to this thing, we'll start as close to 10 as I can, and it's going to be nonstop for an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of information. So just be prepared to absorb it. I sometimes tell folks I wouldn't recommend just frantically taking notes. Just let it flow and listen to what it has to say, and it sinks in. But it'll be some stuff you've never heard before. So be prepared to and have an open mind, and let it flow. And I think you'll hear some options that you didn't know you had that will sound pretty darn good. So we do them about every other month now. Yeah. And I was looking at the RSVP list, and it's pretty good so far. So, but we have, like I said, that's a big place over there, so we have plenty of room.
Plenty of room.
And people always walk in, and if you do walk in, if you can't commit until, at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, you say, you know what, I think I want to go to that seminar. Just come pop in. I mean, it's very informal. I asked for RSVP, but just so we know how many chairs to put up and tables and stuff, and we lay out some pens and paper, that sort of thing. So it's very informal, but if you want to just pop in. There'll be plenty of room. We always have walk-ins. And sometimes we have a lot of walk-ins. I think the last one we had here, we had like 15 or 16 people that just were not on the list, that just decided to come at the last minute. And then inevitably there's, a small handful that don't make it at the last minute either. So it's no big deal. We like to have the head count so I don't have to frantically run around at 5 minutes to 10 pulling out tables and setting them up. I just want to make sure everybody has a comfortable place to sit. And, of course, some of the office gals make some light refreshments, and it's like the worst thing in the world if they run out. Okay, it's okay to have like a truckload too much, but the run out is like the cardinal sin when it comes to making refreshments. So they want to know how many people are coming. So and they usually expect everybody to be pretty darn hungry by the volume of what they put out. So
you've mentioned it in passing a time or two, but you've got a wonderful staff.
I do. I have a staff that I couldn't do without, and I reach times like I've been in the last year where I feel like I need to expand it.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet, but I've just been sort of dodging the issue, but it's going to have to be dealt with. But I'm the only attorney Okay, I'm the only attorney, but I have three other people. Well, I have actually five other people that work for me.
Uh-huh.
And Miss Alex, it's one of my three right hands, other than mine. So I guess I got four right hands. Miss Tammy, and then I have Miss Courtney, who, along with two other gentlemen, Michael and James, they are my crisis team.
Okay.
And they deal just with the crises and stuff. So we kind of have a division of responsibilities. And we talk a lot about crisis, where people were in care and we're trying to resolve issues and save assets and stuff like that. Usually when time is kind of a factor.
Yeah.
We got to manipulate assets and do stuff. So when those come in, the crisis team goes into motion immediately. She runs that team, and of course, whenever there's any communication with TennCare or appeals or something like that, the crisis team handles most of that.
Right.
I mean, I deal with the appeals personally myself, but as far as any kind of colloquy that goes back and forth between them and TennCare, asking for things or want some kind of explanation, they will handle that and get me involved if it becomes necessary.
Perfect.
But the other gals are in the office and they do a lot for me. Sometimes I forget how much they do for me, and I want to keep them. They're great folks. I like to, Alex has been with me for 10 years.
Wow.
Coming up on, I think sometime this year it's 10 years. So it's
wow.
And she can answer a lot of questions. Of course, if it's a legal question, she defers it to me, but they know just what to do, and they govern my time. This is kind of interesting. And when I first started practicing law, it was just organization was like out the window. You just kind of do whatever you want to do at that moment, and you get sidetracked. And next thing you know, you're working on 5 things, and then you don't get anything done. Right?
I've lived that world myself.
Oh my gosh, it's. And then I learned the lesson that pick something and work on it until it's done, and then go on to the next thing. And so the girls keep a calendar, and I stay very busy throughout the week.
Yeah.
And they jealously guard my time. And here's an example. Wednesdays, we don't schedule any appointments unless it's a special set for some reason. Sometimes we have people that can only come in out of town or something like that. But we don't schedule appointments on Wednesday for one reason, because that is the day they kind of lock me in my office and I do my drafting. And when I do my drafting, it's kind of some intellectual work, and I like to just be in there, in the zone, doing what I need to do. I get into deep thought.
Yeah.
All the phone calls they're taken, and if you call, they just take a message. Anybody walks in the office or anything like that, they run. It's like a football team. They run interference.
Yeah.
And they don't let anything disturb Mr. Stan on Wednesday unless it's something very important.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes up, and they will. But that's the theory. So I get a lot of work done on Wednesdays. A lot of because I do all my own drafting when we do all these trusts and all these documents that go with that and everything else that we do. And so, but then on the rest of the week, they schedule appointments or schedule places I have to be. And it's really, at this point in my time, I was kind of hoping to wind down, and it just seems like it's winding up almost. But
right.
When I get to the office, 7:30, going on 8 in the morning, it just seems like I'll do something scheduled from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 or something. And as soon as that's done, there's something from 8 to 10 or 11 and then to 12, and then it's just the whole day is like that. And every now and then, maybe something will cancel and I'll have a slight hour somewhere, but
right.
It just stays very busy. But I couldn't do it without them when they govern the time like that. So that's why I tell folks, if you have a question for me, and I always tell folks I'm more than happy to answer a question, but if you just call, like if you call today at 11:15,
yeah,
I'm probably not in a position to answer the phone call. They will answer it, and they will say, and you'll say, hey, I'd like to talk to Mr. Stan. I need to ask him a question.
Yeah.
And they're not being nosy, but they'll ask what the question is. And they may even ask a couple follow-up questions because they understand and they know that when they come to me and say, hey, you need to call this person back, they know I'm going to say, well, what's it about?
Yeah.
So they have to ask those questions, okay? And they'll jot that down, and they understand a lot of these issues. So they'll jot that down, and they will know to ask a couple follow-up questions to fill in the gaps, okay?
Yeah.
And then they'll give the messages to me. And usually toward the end of the day, I'll find time to call back. Or they will schedule a time. They'll look at the schedule and they'll say, okay, he has a little bit of time at 4 o'clock. And so he'll call you back at 4. Now, the advantage of that is they'll give me the message, and when they'll remind me, hey, a little before 4, you got a phone call at 4 o'clock. And I will look at the question, and I'll look at what they wrote down, and I'll dedicate a little time and thought to that question. Okay?
Sure.
Then I will call the person back. And when I call the person back, we call them 15-minute phone calls, but they're really 15 lawyer minutes. You
Yeah.
you can't do anything in 15 minutes.
That's
But and and they give me some flack about that because there's usually something else going on after that call. But anyway, when I call, my time is going to be dedicated to that question. I've already looked at it. I've already given it some thought.
Yeah.
And then I'll probably ask some questions of my own, and then we'll chat about it. And so it works very well. I know when people call, they're anxious. They want to talk now. They want to get an answer now. It just gets a little disruptive if it's not controlled to some extent. But I will always call back. I will always call back and talk about it. Or if you send an email, I mean, it's not always immediate, but I'll get to it. Those emails get saved. They print them out and they stick them in a place that I go through every now and then to see any email questions, and then I'll answer those.
Yeah.
And I do some of those on, later in the day when things are winding down, or if I get there early for some reason. And the seminar is the same way. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
And I do it for you because when in the work we do and the people I talk to, there's so much misinformation out there. And there's so many people that when they do things, they just end up losing everything because they didn't know what their options were.
Yeah.
And other people aren't telling you. I mean, TennCare is not going to tell you.
Nope.
You can call TennCare if you can get through, and you can ask them. But if you do ask them something, they're just going to pull the can't give legal advice card, and I don't blame them. They can't, and they shouldn't.
Right.
But they're not going to give you the answer to the question you want. Or if they do step out of their lane and give you the answer, it's probably going to be
Could be a wrong answer.
wrong or a little more self-serving on their part.
Right. Right.
And you go to the facilities, and they don't understand what we do to this extent. They just kind of figure if you come in here, you have to pay. They don't really give much thought as to how you pay or what's the methodology behind the pay. And they just say, this is what it costs, and you have to pay. And if you're not paying, TennCare pays. And, they're not the person to ask. So the information is just not out there. It's just not there. I've looked. It's not there. I tried to find it. I couldn't. It's not there. And so, years ago when we started doing these seminars, it was for that reason, is to get this information out, because you do have options. I don't care how dire your situation is. You can come in and you can tell me the most horrific story about all the negative things that have happened, just as bad as you can think of. And I guarantee you, at the end of this conversation, there's something we can do. Yeah. There's something. It may not be the ideal solution. Mostly it is the ideal solution, but the point is there are options out there. There's lots of them, and we can find one will fit. I guarantee it. It'll fit.
Yeah.
So
I had a thought while you were talking about that, because in the service work that you do, you provide a service, but it's a service that is helpful to people. And I've got to say that in your line of work and doing what you do, and even with me sometimes, it's a feel good thing when you've helped somebody. And I was just going to ask you on a personal level, you must enjoy what you do, because there's a lot of detail, a lot of work, and a lot of knowledge that has to be gained in doing what you're doing, in the law, in the rules of the TennCare system, wills, trust, all that arena. There's a lot of detail. And like you said, there's a lot of information, and a lot of us who are not in it every day don't necessarily know all that. So when me or someone comes to you, we're needing help. It feels good. It must feel good to help somebody and know that you've helped them.
And be 100% honest with you, it surprises even me how good it makes me feel to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, for years when I practiced law, it's a second career for me.
Yeah.
I went to law school at age 40. So, I was an engineer for 20 years before this, and I still am basically. But and in the first 10 or so years of my law practice, I did criminal defense work.
Yeah.
And I was a trial attorney. People don't do many trials anymore, but I did a lot of trials, and I liked that. And it was somewhat rewarding. And it was rewarding because with an engineering background, I'm a stickler for rules and details and dotting I's and crossing T's. And you can win a trial by sticking to the rules and beating your opponent over the head with the book of evidence and keeping their evidence out because they're not following the rules. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, I enjoyed that, okay? But when I made the shift to estate planning, of course, that doesn't happen overnight either, but, I'd say over a course of a year, maybe to a year and a half, I was able to make the shift from one to the other. I remember questioning whether it would be as enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know, but I decided to go down that path. And once I got into it and did start doing this for people, and especially the crisis work that we do. That took about another year to get up to speed on some of that stuff. And when we started doing that, I mean, I have to say, it just amazed me how good it does make me feel. And my team too. I mean, we just take a lot of pride in doing that. It's a little, it can be, I like the challenges sometimes. Things come out of nowhere when we're dealing with these government agencies. And it's a different challenge every time. And that's kind of thrilling to me. Kind of brings me back to my trial days. Is stuff comes out of the woodwork that you never saw coming, and you got to come up with a solution in relatively short order. And that happens quite a bit, But I think that's a fun part. And I loved, I had a conversation with a family yesterday, and I think I have one today, but had it yesterday that came in, and this is very typical. They had scheduled this meeting, and they wanted it to be as soon as possible because they had a loved one that was not in care, but basically knocking on the door. Okay, going to be there real soon.
Sure.
And they brought in a bunch of stuff about assets and property and what they owned, and we started talking about it. And I asked a few questions, and I kind of honed in on, there's several strategies we can use, and we kind of honed in on one. I could just see in their faces, there was 3 of them, okay, 3 children, and I could just see their faces light up when we started talking about things that we can actually do, because they came in and they were just in despair. Like, there's nothing we can do. It's going to cost a fortune. It's all going to be gone. I don't know what's going to be. They weren't really worried about what was left over for them, but they just thought, everything mom and dad worked for is just exhausted.
Exactly.
And stuff. And we started talking about stuff, and they're in a situation to protect, maybe not 100%, but a vast majority, and possibly 100%, depending on when this person would end up going into long-term care.
Sure.
I mean, if it's real soon, there might be a little bit of loss, but if it's going to be in a couple of years, we could probably save everything, that sort of thing. So, and that's the big unknown, is when is that going to happen? Nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Like one person said, I think it's going to be pretty soon, like less than a year. Then the daughter was there, said, no, she's got at least 2 or 3 or so. And so, so we don't know.
And nobody knows.
And my crystal ball is not any better than anybody else's. So, but we developed a strategy. We were there for about an hour and a half, and I came up with what I thought was the best strategy for those kind of assets, because they were pretty healthy assets.
Right.
And the situation and the business that we don't know when it's going to happen. So the question is, what can we do now that's going to hedge our situation and put us in favorable, so that when time happens, we're already have already hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Not waiting. And there were some things we could do now. And then the longer the person didn't go in, the better.
Right.
But if they go in, I mean, we had the plan in place, or we're going to have the plan in place. It just took place yesterday. But the bottom line was, they left there almost laughing and chuckling and very happy that there's something that can be done. And it was all stuff that they didn't know when they came in. And don't take that the wrong way. I'm not faulting anybody for not knowing. If you don't know something, you don't know it.
That's right.
And if you go on the internet and there's misinformation there, which there is, then you can't ever know it.
That's right.
Until you either ask or stumble across it or something. But once you know it, be open-minded to it. Don't be closed-minded. About just because you've never heard of something doesn't mean it can't exist. But they were just relieved. I could just see it in their faces, and that's pretty typical of folks, especially in these crisis cases. They just feel like they come in, they're kind of put their hand holding their head, and they're just destitute. There's like nothing that can be done.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding to find out there is something that they can do. And so to answer your question, yes, I mean, I find it very rewarding, and in all honesty, it surprises me how rewarding I find it.
Well, it's because, I think it's because you really do know and understand that you have actually helped a family. And I've been able to enjoy that feeling a few times selling real estate. Something happens, and it happens, and we get it all done, and you got people that are happy with the end result. And it's actually rewarding for us beyond just the compensation.
Sure.
It's rewarding to know that you actually help somebody.
Yep. And another thing that warms my heart is when I get people that come in and say that they were talking to somebody else, and they said, you need to go talk to Mr. Stan or something like that.
Right.
I think that is just, you can't get better, even in your real estate world, you couldn't possibly get better business than word of mouth.
Oh, absolutely.
That is the best thing that's out there, because, reputation and, integrity, is everything.
Right.
And, when the people are satisfied and they talk to other people about it, I mean, that's just, That makes my day when somebody like comes in. Some people say, well, I came to one of your seminars and that was the first I learned of it. But when somebody comes in and says, or people come to the seminars and say, hey, I talked to several people. They came to the seminar and they told me to come, and so I decided to come because other people had come and said it was worth it. It was a good job. Yeah. So that's very rewarding, and it must happen in your real estate world.
Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience with you and your staff, and I don't mind people knowing that Teresa and I have used your services, but for her father's sake, because we had current circumstances. And you and your staff have been just bend over backwards to take care of whatever we've needed to happen, and of course, guided us through some things that we would have probably never got through. And it's everything seems to be falling into place.
And sometimes you probably felt, I wonder if he's going to get through it. Meaning us, But yeah, we know what you mean. There's some frustrating times. Yeah. There's some frustrating things you have to deal with when we go through this. I mean, there's red tape from several different sources, and we just have to deal with it. Now, so we get so used to dealing with it, we kind of know some shortcuts and ways to speed things up. Yeah. And of course, you're referring a lot with Courtney, who would interface with people a lot. Yeah. She is. I wish I had a dozen like her. To be honest. Yeah. But she's very good. She understands it and she gets things done. She knows her limitations. She knows when to pull me in. Right. So, but yeah, that's I'm very proud of those folks. I'm very proud of those folks. So I'll tell you what is a very rewarding thing is when we have a fair hearing, and we are successful at that. And I'm 100% successful at fair hearings. Yeah. Now, I don't count on that. That's just the record. Yeah. So I'm not guaranteeing a result. I'm just saying so far that's what the record.
So far, so good.
And we've never failed to get anybody eligible, and never came out on the short end of the stick on a fair hearing. Yeah. Which is the appeal process, and those are always rewarding too when you get those to go your way, because it usually is a blow to the family to find out that TennCare denied us, and now all I can say to the family is, look, it was a wrongful denial, and I'm going to appeal it, and we're going to be successful. Those folks are thinking, what if you're not? Gosh, they denied us. If everything was okay, it would have gone through the first time. And it's hard to explain, but it's almost, I don't want to say commonplace, but it's way more often than you would think that they deny something and they're just plain wrong. Yeah. Way more often than you think. It's probably 25% to a third of the time. And it's gotten more so in the last year or two. Yeah. So I don't know what goes on behind closed doors with the Bureau of TennCare, but they've taken this tact where they deny a lot of things. Yeah. And it has a cycle to it, and we're seeing this already too. They deny a lot of cases. Now they are extremely backlogged on appeals. Okay? Yeah. And when we find this result, we find they're backlogged on appeals, then we find them taking cases and just hurry up and running them through and approving them just because they got so many things they just, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or even the appeals they'll do that with. They'll give us a call and say, can we resolve this without the hearing because they don't say they're covered up, but that's why. Yeah. So here's a case in point. They're so covered up. When you file an application, they really have a statutory requirement to deal with it in 90 days. Yeah. Okay. And we had a case where we filed it. I'm trying to think when we did it, but I know we were coming up on the 2.5 month mark, coming up on the 3 month mark. Yeah. And I know it finally just now got assigned to caseworker because I got an informational request for standard stuff like the updated bank records and a couple of stuff that's just a very vanilla request kind of thing. Nothing to it. Pretty common. And so that tells me they just got it. And I looked at the calendar. I thought, well, they're waxing this 90-day deadline pretty quickly. And so I'm thinking, well, one of two things can happen. They might just ask for this information. And next thing you know, they'll rubber stamp it and say approved because they just can't afford to spend any time on it. Or the appeals process. Here's how that works. Let's say they deny. Yeah. We have to say, okay, we want to appeal it. We don't even have to give a reason why we want to appeal it, just that we appeal. Okay, that perfects the appeal. Yeah. And we have a time frame to do that. Now, when you do that and you say, we want to appeal this, they have 90 days to give us a hearing date. That's not 90 days to have the hearing. That's 90 days to set the date.
That's unbelievable.
And recently, the 90 days has come and gone. Okay. Yeah. Now, I think I talked a little while, a month or two ago or more, about one that came through, and this is one that was fiercely fought, and I was getting kind of tired of how it was going. And the 90 days, I thought, well, I can complain, but I got to wait at least in statutory time. If I complain on day 80, they're perfectly within their rights saying it's not been 90 days, and so there's nothing you can do about it. But 90 days came, and it went. Yeah. And so I filed a very unusual common law form of action called a writ of mandamus,
Yeah.
which is one of the 4 extraordinary writs. I mean, that
Yeah.
may not mean anything to anybody, but they may have heard of some of the other.
Sure.
One of the common writs that you hear is the writ of habeas corpus.
Yeah.
You got a writ of mandamus, writ of quo warranto, and a writ of prohibition. Those are the 4, and they're very uncommon. They call them extraordinary relief.
Okay.
But the writ of mandamus is something you file with an authority like a court that commands action. It forces action. And that's what I did. And I said, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of talking to you. I'm tired of asking you. I've been nice. I waited the 90 days. It has come and gone, and you are not being held to the rules. If I was on day 91, they'd be climbing down it's up, too late. Day 91.
Yeah.
You had 90 days, and you passed the date. I would not get any relief.
Right.
But, and we were about 6 or 7 days past the 90 days. And I just thought, you know what, let's just turn this around for a change. I'm just tired of it. And so I filed the writ of mandamus. And of course, before the ink was dry on the thing, I hear from him. Okay. And so we got the hearing date.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I never even got to have the writ heard. But I mean, that's what the intent was. It's like, look, if you're going to, I guess here's the way I put it. You just pick the fight with the toughest kid on the block.
Yeah. You're picking a fight with us.
So if you're going to do that, then we're going to respond. So anyway, they responded, got the hearing date, and then, as I expected, that was one of those ones where they didn't want to go to the hearing. They were not in a good position. And I finally got a call from one of the attorneys. He was a very, very pleasant person, the attorney was, and we managed to work it out and with no hearing. And we pretty much got everything we asked for because we were in the right from the beginning when we filed the application.
Yeah.
I don't know. That one took a while to get through.
Do you ever get any explanations from them as to why it took so long or what they were sitting on it for? Or
The closest we ever get is when we're actually discussing it with them.
okay.
Or when we get into court. When you get into court, the court wants to know what happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just an embarrassing situation for them. I just don't understand how they would go to the hearing with that explanation. But
It's just like they just didn't want to do it.
well, and
They tell the court, we just didn't want
and
to.
unfortunately, the court usually will give them some kind of relief, but they'll usually curtail it or something. They'll say, okay, there was one not too long ago where we got there and they said, well, we're really not ready to respond to one of these issues. And my question was, why not? It's been 90 days, and then another week, 2 weeks, when you set the hearing, I said, I'm prepared. Why aren't you prepared? And the court kind of felt the same way. But
Yeah.
the court said, well, I'll let you have a continuance, but no more than 14 days or something like that.
Right.
And so it's like I opposed it, but I thought, well, he's going to give it to him anyway.
Yeah.
So, but at least he curtailed it, and they couldn't have like 60 days to respond or something. Because it's hard to explain to a family why this thing's dragging out.
Yeah.
Because they don't know where the mistakes are being made. I'm telling them, hey, we're in good shape. But again, it's stressful. It's stressful.
Well,
it's hanging out there. It's not getting done. But then it's always a real red letter day in the office when the approval comes in. I get to call and say, hey, remember I told you all this time? I kept saying, we'll get there. Don't worry. I'm sorry, but we're taking care of it. We'll get there. And then we got to say, hey, good news. We got there.
Yeah.
And we're there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took this long, but and that's the reason why.
Reminds me of a Bible verse.
Okay.
Run with patience
There
the
you go.
race that's set before us.
That's exactly right. But it's when you deal with something like this, if you are doing it on your own,
Yeah.
I just don't see where you have any chance whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because when they say denied, they really don't tell you why.
Yeah.
Or they might say something very generic, like you're denied for being over-resourced.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what is it? What asset are you referring to that over-resources us?
Right, right.
So we have to put that all together. But if you don't know why they denied you, how do you appeal it? Because when you get to the appeal, you are the moving party, which means you got to say, hey, here's what they did, and here's why it's wrong.
Yeah.
Here's what they should have done, and here's the proper procedure to do this, and here's the answer they should have got, which would support approval. And so you got to know the rules inside out to point out what they did wrong and tell them what they should have done right.
Yeah.
And now they have to explain that, and you're doing it by citing the authority. I don't get in there and just, when you get into court, a lot of times the first words out of somebody's mouth is, "I think." It's like right there. It's like, okay, I don't. Nobody cares what you think. I mean, really, we're in a court. We're talking about proof. We're talking about law.
Yeah.
We're talking about evidence. So I get in there and say, look, here's an example. You didn't experience this with your dad because he was single, but if you're a married couple,
Yeah.
the rules are a little different. I mean, one spouse in a married couple goes into care. it creates something called a snapshot date. Okay, there's a different name. That's not the legal name for it, but that's what it's known throughout the industry. And it's a date in time where they look at, and whatever the assets are on that date is how they make the analysis. Because, your assets are a moving target.
Yeah.
So they pick a date, they call it the snapshot date. And
Right.
technically it's defined as the first day that you went into a facility or hospital where you were there for 30 consecutive days.
Yes.
Okay. So, and if
Yes.
if you were there for 3 or 4 days in a hospital and then went to a facility, that's okay. You can tack those two together.
Right.
Or if the gap between them was less than 4 days, you can tack. But anyway, so there's a snapshot date. Now, we had a case that was denied.
Yeah.
And I got looking at it, and I looked at the resources, and I thought, I called them, I talked to them, and I said, what did you use for the snapshot date? Because it looks to me like it was the wrong one. And they told me.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's the wrong snapshot date. I said, let's walk through it. Let me show you what it really should be. Well, that didn't go over too big, and they just kind of said, well, you know what? I already denied it, so you can appeal it. They just wouldn't listen to me. But it's like I'm talking to them, and it's like, this is a word problem. You can only get one answer. You can't get, it's like 2 + 2. There's only one answer to it.
Yeah.
This is just like that. I said, here's the records.
It's not a matter of opinion.
It's right. Here's the records where we went in.
Yeah.
Here's where he's been. Here's how we established the snapshot date. And
Yeah.
you picked the wrong one. And of course, yes, they were over-resourced on that date because we were moving stuff around or weren't done moving stuff around. And it said, but on the snapshot date, we had already moved everything around because you've heard me say many times, I'm not going to file an application until it's right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we had it the way we want it. And so and they dug their heels in and they had a fair hearing. I thought, okay, I'll just explain what my case. And I'm all ready to do it. I had everything read out, and I'm all ready to explain how they calculated it. Because once I figured out what they were doing, I figured out how they calculated it, figured out exactly what they didn't count.
Yes.
And it was a matter of 3 or 4 days, and I know exactly where it came from. And I had the rule that shows exactly how to do it and how you should count those days, those 3 or 4 days. And so I was kind of loaded for bear for the hearing, right?
Yeah.
And I felt very confident in my position. Show up for the hearing, and like any other hearing, even though they're, since COVID, they're pretty much all telephonic.
Yeah.
And I show up for the hearing. Like any other hearing, I'm the moving party. I get to have an opening statement.
Yeah.
Kind of lay out what I'm planning on putting proof on and stuff.
Yes.
That whole hearing lasted 12 minutes. And about 3 minutes into my opening statement, the TennCare attorney interrupted me, which is kind of a no-no when you're doing a...
Yes.
But he apologized and said, I hate to interrupt your opening statement, but I just think we can just cut to the chase and said, you're right. I've looked at the case. The caseworker came up with the wrong snapshot date. And the snapshot date is the day you say it is. And on that day, they were not over-resourced, so we're ready to recommend approval. And so I was almost disappointed. I didn't get that. I felt like saying, but I got this whole thing I want to say.
I'm not through slamming you yet.
But it's like, okay, in other words, it's a win. It's like a forfeit. Almost.
Yes.
It's a win. I thought, well, you got to take it. And so I said, okay, all right. And it kind of wrapped up. I was into that. It was that quick.
Yeah.
But I'd like to ask the question, how come we didn't get there before that?
Exactly.
But I don't know. I don't know what.
And it's hard to know. It's hard to know what is it just.
Maybe he just got the information that day. I don't know. They don't share that stuff with me. And some of them are a little more. I've had the longest one I've had lasted 5 hours. 5 hours.
Really?
Yep.
That might have been grueling.
Well, it was on some of the witnesses. Of course, when you're cross-examining a witness on the phone, it's just not the same. But
Yeah.
it's we call witnesses and stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's, yeah, that was the longest one we had. And
That's
we were
amazing.
successful with that one, but we were successful with all of them. But some of them you have to work for. But you just never know when they're going to dig their heels in, when they're not, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
and that was just a classic case. So the point I guess I'm trying to make is if you just if you try to do it yourself, or somebody that's what my wife says, stay in your lane. If you get maybe somebody that wants to try to do this work and they don't do much of this work. When you get the denial and they say you're over-resourced, I can just see somebody saying, well, Martha, I guess they're just not going to pay for us.
Right.
They said no, and not do anything, and throw in the towel.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what they did wrong.
Yeah.
They don't know what the
even,
Bureau did wrong.
Or even how to begin to appeal or fight it.
And you can, and it's like any other court thing. All the remedies of law are available. Like they're like that writ that I filed. You can do that kind of stuff. You can.
Yeah. I wrote that down. How does that? Say that again.
Writ, W-R-I-T, of mandamus, M-A-N-D-A-M-U-S.
Of mandamus.
It's Latin. and it compels action, and usually from a higher court.
Okay.
I've done it a couple times in my practice.
Yeah.
I was in a lower court one time, and they would get stonewalling me and stalling for something.
Interesting.
And so I filed a writ of mandamus with the higher court to force the lower court to do what they're supposed to do. I'm entitled to my remedy at law, and you can't just stall me and put me off. And that was happening. They kept saying, well, it was a juvenile court, and they kept saying, well, I've got that under advisement. 30 days later, I'd say, hey, I want to revisit this issue I brought, the motion I raised about this. And I said, well, I'm still taking it into consideration. I'd say, well, how long are you going to have it under consideration? Because the statute has a time limit, and when you keep having it under consideration, you're circumventing the exact same the statute is designed to prevent.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much do this forever. I got that 2 or 3 times in a row. I just said, you know what, that's enough. I got a client here that needs relief, and they're not getting it, and all I'm getting is, well, I'm still thinking about it. Well, we're going to make you think about it faster. And so filed it with the circuit court, and the circuit court recognized what I was doing immediately, and they kind of hammered the lower court, and they ordered it be done in the instanter. Which, you know what that means? That means right now.
That means now.
No more, no delay. Right
Interesting.
now. And that judge, she's retired now, but she was not happy about what the lower court was doing. So I have these remedies at law when you can't just blow me off. You know, that's why I say you're gonna deal with me. You're picking a fight with the toughest kid on the block, because I'm gonna exercise everything that's available to me. We're gonna argue about it. I'm gonna bring up the rules. I know they hate when you bring up the rules, but that's what makes the thing work.
I was trying to think of a Southern slang term that would mean the same thing as that term.
we could probably come up with
That was
one.
like have the come to Jesus meeting. That's what
Yeah, sometimes they say a prayer meeting. Yeah.
the prayer meeting.
Meeting.
Listen, we're just going to get serious. We're going to get this done.
You got to sit down and just come to grips with the facts.
That's right.
And sometimes the facts are not, they're never all in your favor, right?
No.
There's always some things that, we have to deal with, but you got to deal with, you got to play the cards you're dealt.
Well,
that's a good way to think about it.
Thinking about what you do and how you do it, if you begin to address things ahead of time, you and your staff with your experience, like you say, know all the information up front, so you avoid getting in a position where you're out of position.
It's exactly right. And if you do that and you do the work up front, there's like no surprises, and that's the way I like it.
Yeah.
That's the way I like it. Even when we do our trust, we've been talking about like dealing with TennCare, we do our asset protection trust, which is a way to protect property early. When you're not really in the nursing home, or you're not headed there real soon.
Right.
You're just worried about it.
Right.
And we can put property in there. And a lot of times when I have clients that have those trusts, and then somebody goes into care some years later or something, they'll often ask for the trust. And some people say, well, how do they know I have that thing? And say, well, they really know it because they do certain asset searches on their own. And when they pull up the public record and they look at your house and they see your house is titled to this trust, then they know you have a trust, right? So it's and that's no big deal. Don't worry about that. At some point in time, we'd probably have to tell them anyway. And so they'll say, can I see that trust? Can I see a copy of that? And you have to give it to them. You have to, you can't, if you don't give them what they ask for, they can deny you for a failure to respond to an informational request, right?
Right.
So you have to give them the trust. So I sent them the trust on this one case, and talking to them on the phone, and they say, I just want to review this. And I said, well, I know exactly what you're looking for. He goes, how do you know what I'm looking for? I said, well, I know what you're looking for. You're looking to see if this person has any access to the principal.
Yeah.
Or even then, I think he said, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, I know. And I said, I'll tell you what, I know exactly where to look for it in the trust.
Yeah.
I'll give you the sections to look for, and you're not going to find it. It's not there. So you go ahead and look. I know what you're going to do with the trust. I know why you want it. I know exactly where in the trust you're going to look for it. Go ahead, but you won't find it. So if you want to save some time, but of course they don't, and I guess they did, and they didn't.
Yes.
Because as I know what we're supposed to do, it's just like you're saying. We know what we're going to do. We front load it.
Yeah.
We do it right. If it takes a little, like especially in these crisis cases, it's going to take a little bit extra time to get it done right. And the person's like private paying, and it's expensive. It's like it's worth it to just go as fast as we can, but not compromise what we're trying to do.
Right.
If it's going to take a couple extra days to a week, we're just stuck with it. I mean, there's no good. I mean, if you can start this process while Medicare is paying the bill, that's great. Because you have that 100 days or up to 100 days, and we got plenty of time. But if you're outside that window and you're private paying and you come to me, it's going to be at least a couple of weeks. I mean, even the best cases that require the least amount of effort, every bit of 2 weeks. There's just stuff to do.
Well, I have because of our current circumstances and the circumstances that we've talked with you about for Teresa's dad and getting that son. We've dealt a lot with the nursing home aspect of what you do and taking care of getting a 10 care approved and all that kind of stuff. But in your normal course and in your business, one of the better things to do is, long before that's ever even thought about, is to begin some real thinking on estate planning, which is a big part of what you do as well. Instead of crisis planning, you're not crisis planning, but you're actually future planning with your assets, your belongings, setting up a trust. Talk to a little bit about the advantages of starting that kind of thing early with you, long before nursing home cares maybe even being the picture at all.
Well, we break that down into two categories. One is crisis planning, which is defined as, hey, somebody's already in the nursing home. What can we do to save our assets?
Right.
Or pre-planning, which is like, all right, nobody's really there yet, but we're worried if someday we might have to go.
Right.
We're in our 60s or early 70s or something.
Sure.
We're okay now. We're pretty healthy, but we've worked all our life. We have all this stuff that we amassed, and sure don't want to lose it and stuff like that.
Right.
So that's pre-planning. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when in the classic tool to pre-plan against long-term care is our asset protection trust. It is really the only thing that's available out there when you're not in care.
Yes.
So when you go into crisis, several strategies are available.
Yeah.
I mean, almost a dozen of them, okay, are
Right.
available. The difficulty with those are they're only available once you're in care. So none of those are available. So if you come to me, like you and Teresa, you're
Right.
both healthy, but you may be worried about it. None
Yeah.
of those are available to you, and the reason is because neither of you are actually in care right now.
That's right.
But the pre-planning tool of the trust is available.
Right.
And so we can accomplish the same thing. What we do is we put our property in this trust. The minute we put it in the trust, it's protected.
Yes.
The very day we transfer it to the trust, they can't get at it.
Yes.
But you've heard me talk many times that when you put property into a trust, under 10 care law, that's considered an uncompensated transfer or a gift because
Yes.
you're not getting, the trust isn't paying you for it. So, you put your real estate in there, it's a couple $100,000. The trust doesn't pay you for it. First of
Right.
all, and it wouldn't make sense to pay because if you did, you wouldn't have changed your position.
Right.
You have a
Exactly.
$300,000 house, you put it in the trust, and the trust pays you $300,000 cash. You still have a $300,000 asset. We haven't gotten anywhere.
Right.
So we want to divest it to the trust, and when you do that, 10 care looks at that as a divestment, and a divestment, which is what I call a gift, and that triggers this penalty period that we are always dealing with.
That's right.
So if you put your property in trust and stay the heck out of the facilities for 5 years or 60 months, that's the goal.
Yes.
That's the goal. If you do that when you're relatively healthy, that's great.
Yeah.
That's what and so I often get asked, when you put your property in this trust, it's going to trigger a penalty period, but it's triggering a penalty period if
Yes.
you would apply for 10 care.
Yeah.
But when you put it in, there's really no penalty period yet. The penalty period doesn't appear until you ask for benefits.
Right.
And let me rephrase it. It doesn't appear until you ask for benefits, and that asking is within 60 months of when you gave it away.
Yes.
So people say at the seminars, a lot they'll say, so when you do that, you're triggering a penalty period intentionally? And I say, absolutely. It's exactly what we're doing. I said, well, why would someone want to do that? And the answer is we want to get this clock started now while
Yes.
you're healthy.
Yes.
And get it behind us. We don't want to wait until the day you file the application and we have to deal with the 60 months before that day.
Yes.
People talk about the look back 5 years. Nobody really understands when it starts. They hear, there's this 5-year look back rule. Well, we know it's a rule and we know it's 5 years, but when does it start and when does it end?
Yeah.
It begins the day you file a 10 care application. It's a future event for you and me.
Yes.
And most of the people listening to me,
Right.
It hasn't happened yet.
Right.
But when you file an application, that's day one.
Yes.
And now they can look back 5 years from that day. Well, we want to get this clock started now. Get past the 5 years. I don't want to deal with the 5 years before going to a nursing home because that's going to be the time when people are getting worried. They start giving stuff away. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we want to get this clock started now. It's not really a real penalty yet. It's almost like I call it a look forward period because it's
Right.
not the same 5-year period.
That's right.
We transfer it today. Now, a year from now, we look at it and say, okay, where are we if we would apply right now? Okay, we're 1 year into our look back period. If we applied now, they're going to see the transfer a year ago, right?
Right.
2 years from now, they're going to see the transfer. So when we get to 5 years, that's like the goal because now they're outside this jurisdictional 60 months, and I don't care if you had given away $5 million of assets. They're now invisible to them. At least, I mean, they'll see it, but there's nothing, they lack jurisdiction to impose a penalty period.
Right.
And so if you have a lot of wealth and we're worried about maybe losing some of it, I mean, $5 million you'd never consume all that in care, right?
No.
You'd have to be there for 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
But nonetheless, you don't want to have to private pay for that length of time. So, we put into this trust tons of property. So I call that's a strategy I call divest and wait. So basically you're putting property in the trust and you're trying to stay out for 5 years. If your age is right and your health is good, we can do something called divest and insure, where we can get some long-term care insurance that if we fall short of our 5 years, we'll have an insurance that will help pay the cost of care to get to 5 years. Okay. Now, not many people have that, and once you get a certain age or you have a failing health, the insurance companies, won't give it to you.
Right.
So, but if you have that, that's a grand tool. So there's a couple of strategies there to hedge our bet. But you're right. Looking ahead of time, you get it done. You get it done while you can think calmly about it. When people come in my office in crisis, they are not thinking calmly.
Yeah.
Because they're panicked. They're just panicked. And,
Yeah.
But this way you sit down and say, this is what I want to happen. All the other stuff we do is what the trust does when it leaves property after death and stuff. We want to get all that the way you want it. And we want to walk through this and say, look, we're going to move this property into this trust. And after 5 years, then we don't have to worry about anything that's in this trust. It is all 100% creditor protected. Not only can they not get at it,
Right.
they can't impose a penalty period, and it escapes estate recovery, which is how they go after property after death. I mean, it just is the best of all worlds if we do it early. So if somebody goes into care that has done one of these trusts and has stayed out of the facility for 5 years, the only thing we have to worry about is what's not in the trust, which is usually like your income or what I call your operating account.
Right.
Maybe $50,000 because you like to travel or go on cruises or just do the things you like to do in your retirement years.
Sure.
Or whatever lump of money you need.
Yeah.
Now, all you have to deal with is that because it's not in the trust. And that usually resides in the posture of a money in the bank in some way or another.
Right.
It's not real estate. And real estate is cumbersome at the last minute like that.
Yeah, it is.
And so the real estate's already been protected. It's been in the trust for 5 years. And the money in the bank, I'm telling you, I can protect it with a stroke of a pen overnight, that quick.
Yeah.
We can convert it to something else just like that. And we're off. It's just the best of all worlds to do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
But, it just, stuff happens, and stuff happens without any knowledge.
Yeah.
And so, even if somebody got a diagnosis of something progressive,
Yeah.
maybe Alzheimer's or a Parkinson's or something along those lines, those diseases that start and just slowly progress.
Right.
That might be something to get somebody thinking about it.
Yeah.
But sometimes things happen that just come out of nowhere, and, it's like getting hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat, right?
Yeah.
Like a stroke, it
Yeah.
just happens.
It just
Nobody really
happens.
sees a stroke coming. If you do, you're talking about minutes.
Right.
But you don't see that, and that happens. And so a lot of people just end up in crisis and don't get the chance or just weren't able to do the pre-planning. But the forethought of pre-planning is definitely the preferred way to do it.
Absolutely. Of course, that's what a lot of this show is dedicated about, is to encourage you to do so. And of course, not only listening here, getting good information, but I want to remind folks about the seminar coming up. We got a couple more minutes left.
We do.
And that would be a great place to start, just to get your foot in the door, get a little information, and understand wills, trust, what they can do for you, what they don't do, and
That's right.
that kind of thing. And why not take advantage of something that's absolutely free to you?
Yeah, it's no cost, and there's no pressure. I mean, a lot of times I get people on the phone that'll say, or the girls will tell me, somebody called and say, well, no lawyer's going to give up 2 hours of his time without getting some money or something. Am I going to have to sign something, or am I going to have to commit to something? And the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. Just not that kind of person. Just don't do it that way. What I do sells itself, and if you're interested, we'll do it. If you're not, we'll still part friends. If it's not a fit, then I really don't want to do it for you anyway. Because if it's not a fit, it's not a fit.
That's right.
It usually is, but I'm just saying, come and listen. Most people that listen get pretty captivated with what I talk about. Some people at the end of it, I can tell, it just doesn't work for what they're looking for, and they might ask me a question or two, and maybe we don't hear from them again. Some we do, and some we hear. You'd be surprised how many people come to me and hire me and said, I came to one of your seminars 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it may not be right now, but it might be some other time.
It's one of those things that's easy to put off.
It is.
It's easy to put off. You go, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. But when you go to the seminar, and like with you, and the visits I've had here, it's been on my mind.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to do that. You know.
One thing I hear is they say, I came to your seminar 2 years ago, and I wasted just 2 years. I wish I had done it because now it's 2 years later.
Yeah.
But again, it's there's no pressure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to talk you into anything. I'm not here to talk you out of anything.
Yeah.
If you like it, it's a fit, we'll do it. If not, have some more refreshments and just,
Yeah.
we'll still be friends. Nothing personal about it. But let me go over that real quick. It's a week from tomorrow, which is September the 14th. That is a Saturday. And Saturday seminars, we always do it at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's called Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. It is going to be the venue where it takes place is in Pulaski at the American Legion there.
Yes.
The physical address is 425 Legion Drive. So come on to that if you want to. If you can't commit and at the last minute, just walk in. It's okay. We got plenty of room. And we do another one in November up in Franklin, but I'll talk a little more about that maybe after this one.
Let's give your office phone number, too.
Yeah, office 931-363-7222. Or you can go to my website, which is easy to get to, estateplanstand.com.
That is a good website. Estate Plan Stan, that phone number 931-363-7222. Stan's office is located on the square in Pulaski next to the Star Theater.
Yeah.
Big doings there, too.
We're doing Grease. Had second rehearsal last night.
Good deal.
Yeah,
Good deal.
so-
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I want to see that.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
I wanna see that.
And we're here every Friday from 8 to 9, for Bulletproof Estate Planning on this radio station. So
That's awesome.
Stay tuned.
We always enjoy you, Stan. We'll see you next Friday.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Lawrenceburg, broadcast services of Prospect Communications.
A boy and his father in Corton, Georgia.